Welcome to another edition of the BIPAC Monday Brew. And this week we've got a lot of Senate action that we're going to talk about. And first, let's go to the state of Maine, where it has been expected for quite a while that the governor of the state, Janet Mills, was going to challenge Senator Susan Collins. And Governor Mills was obviously the first pick of the Democratic leadership to run against Collins. They need to put that seat in play. The rest of the candidate list didn't look too impressive. So they put the full court pressure on Governor Mills, and she is in the race. Now, she's going to be 78 years old at the time of the election. So the age issue for Collins won't be a factor. And you've got a situation here where, remember 6 years ago when Collins ran in 2020 and the Democrats spent over $60 million in a state of just 1 million people to take her out. And all the polls suggested they would be successful. And at the end of the day, Collins wins by 8 points. And so there's obviously inherent strength there for Susan Collins. This will be a real tough race. It's going to be a premier race of the 2026 election cycle. And we'll be spending a lot of attention here as this campaign between Susan Collins and Janet Mills develops over the course of next year. So a big one coming up. A big surprise announcement came in the fact that six-term Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton will challenge Senator Ed Markey in the Democrat primary next year for, of course, the U.S. Senate. Now, this is kind of a long shot, to say the least, for Congressman Moulton, who is viewed as a little bit more on the moderate side in Massachusetts, which probably isn't certainly going to help him in a Democratic primary. But don't forget, also back in 2020, that you had a primary challenge to Markey at that time, and the candidate was then Congressman Joseph P. Kennedy III. So a Kennedy running in the Democratic primary in Massachusetts, opposing Markey, and starts off with a big lead. At the end of the day, Markey wins by 10 points. Now, that should be a big signal that he is going to be tough to oppose and to defeat. So Seth Moulton giving up his House seat to challenge Senator Ed Markey in the Democratic primary next year. It's a late one. It won't be until September 1st. But this one will be kind of interesting to watch, but won't be surprising to see the same result, that Markey wins by at least 10 points. In Louisiana, our third and final Senate news of this week, Senator Bill Cassidy has some good news and bad news. Now, the good news is he's dodged his most difficult general election opponent, which would have been the former Democratic governor of the state, John Bel Edwards. So Mr. Edwards says he is not going to run for the Senate, so that pretty well locks up the seat for the Republicans. So all the attention now will be on the Republican primary. And this will be a big one because, first of all, Louisiana has changed its election system. No longer for federal races do we have that November primary election where it's a jungle primary, all the candidates on one ballot, and then the top two advance to the general, or the runoff, actually, election in December if no one received 50% of the vote. That system now, for the federal races in Louisiana, is out. They're back to having partisan primaries with runoffs. Now, this does not help Cassidy. Cassidy has problems in the Republican primary, most specifically because he was one of the 7 Republicans who voted to impeach President Trump on the second time. Remember the January 6th impeachment. Cassidy was one of 7 Republicans who voted for that, and President Trump has not forgotten that, and he's coming after Cassidy. Now, the question is, who will be the opponent? Now, already we've had former Congressman and Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House, John Fleming, who is now the Louisiana State Treasurer. He's in the race, but he hasn't really gotten much traction yet. The big entrance that has just happened at the end of last week is State Representative Julie Emerson. Now, she is a partner in the Trafalgar Polling Organization and the Trafalgar Group Polling Organization. and she is the chairman of the State House Ways and Means Committee. So she's been a state representative for a while. She's a real candidate. Now, this also tells us that Congresswoman Julia Letlow is unlikely to run for the Senate now because it was very unlikely that both Emerson and Letlow would have opposed each other. So we'll see a crowded Republican primary here. All the guns aimed at Senator Cassidy. You can bet President Trump is going to come in with guns a-blazing because he wants to even the score. This primary right now is scheduled for April the 18th. It could move based on the Louisiana case by the Supreme Court if they have to postpone the primary a little bit. But there will be a partisan Republican primary. And if Cassidy goes for a runoff, into a runoff, this may end up being a candidate, an incumbent, who does not return. So that is certainly a race to watch early in the year. So the big three this week: Maine, Massachusetts, Louisiana, lots of action, and we will follow all three of these races as the campaign cycle unfolds. So until next week, this has been the BIPAC Monday Brew.